Massachusetts State Senator Dylan Fernandes sat down with our own Melissa Matinzi for an update on the legislation and issues that matter to constituents in Plymouth and Barnstable County.
Hi, I'm here with Dylan Fernandes, Senator for the Plymouth and Barnstable District. Thank you for joining us today.
Such a pleasure.
So let's jump right in for what's been happening up at the State House.
Well, there's a lot going on. So we just we had bill filing for our first 2 weeks. Thousands of bills got filed. We filed 48 of them. So people can check them out on our website on malegislature.gov. A lot there around protecting our environment and water quality, around lowering housing costs, around supporting tourism, a whole host of issues. So encourage people to check that out on our website. And then committee assignments just got announced. It's probably the newest thing. Honored and excited to say we're chairing a committee, the Committee on Agriculture and Fisheries, which I think is so important for Plymouth, for our district. And then vice chairing the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, another big committee with a lot of local issues tied to it. And then vice chairing the Committee on cannabis as well. And there's going to be a lot of changes there, I hope, this session.
So let's start with the agriculture and natural resources? Fisheries. Okay. How is that going to tie in with Plymouth and Barnstable District?
Yeah, well, these are two historic industries in our local community. I mean, Plymouth County actually is quite rural, and there's a lot of agriculture here, whether that's cranberries and other types of farming. It's actually quite a large industry here. And then fisheries, of course, is huge. You know, Plymouth has a relatively large fishing fleet. The Cape, although not the size it used to be, also has a good sized fishing fleet. And then some of the bright spots we've seen in the fishing industry is actually around aquaculture, particularly around oysters and other types of shellfish. So that's a real bright spot. It's something the state's been is supportive of, and as the chair of this committee, we're going to be working to support all aspects of our fishing industry.
So what are some of the bright spots coming up, do you think, for that aspects of the industry?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of young people are actually getting involved in aquaculture, and you're seeing a lot of kind of new businesses grow in that space, and that's where you're seeing a lot of increased production in terms of our fisheries, and it's great. I mean, I'm a big fan of oysters. I don't know if you are too, but it's fascinating. Like oysters will taste different, even in the same harbor, and like different sides of the harbor, depending on the type of the different types of water flow and the geography and the like. And so that's been a really big kind of growth area is really highly local oysters, and that's something we want to keep supporting.
So that also ties into what they call the blue futures economy as well, I would think, and supporting side businesses that come off of that.
Yeah, so I mean, they're part of the blue economy. So and it's great. It's great too because they also act as natural filters for our waterways, getting out nitrogen and other kind of pollutants in the water too. And so not only are they delicious, not only is it supporting a growing industry, we're actually cleaning the water at the same time. But this is part of kind of a broader movement that we're pushing for, and really a lot of people are pushing for in this region around having southeastern Massachusetts be a blue economy hub. We're heading in that direction. That's kind of some of the growth spots for this industry. We actually have legislation that we filed again at MA Legislature, MAlegislature.gov. People can check that out. But that's something where we want to encourage kind of economic development in this area, a way for people to sustain a livelihood down here. And these are like really good jobs to be attracting and supporting in an area of the state, southeastern Massachusetts, Plymouth, the Cape, that I think really hasn't gotten the attention that it deserves from the state. And so this is, I think, a good place to focus this industry.
That sounds exciting. So we'll be looking out for down the road a little bit to see what comes up from that.
Yeah. I mean, we're also working on a kind of a blue tech kind of accelerator program too for, for small startups to be able to have either an incubator space or a space where they can, start and have a small business and connect with kind of startup resources. As a way, you really need to try to build like a community and infrastructure around startups to have it be a self-sustaining model. So that's something that we're looking at the state level as well.
That sounds really exciting. It sounds a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned cannabis. What are we looking for on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm vice chairing the committee. I think, this has actually been a good thing from the state in terms of revenue, and good thing for towns too.
Right.
Like towns are actually getting a lot of funding from legalization of cannabis, and so there's been some bright spots there. The Cannabis Control Commission, as originally constituted, it's actually not super functional. It needs a lot of updating, in my view, and the view of a lot of people in the state. Because the way it's structured is a little disorganized, in that you have kind of you have a board and then you have an executive director, and it's really not clear who has power over what, and that causes power vacuums and also power clashes that we've seen. And in the end result is that people going into the cannabis business have a really hard time interfacing with the agency, and that also impacts consumers. And so I think at a minimum, we're going to take a really kind of close look at restructuring the CCC in a way that actually supports and helps businesses and consumers.
So you got a lot going on with those couple of committees. What else do you have coming up on your plate, do you think, in terms of what would impact our area?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing that kind of fell into our lap like really early on was around the state trying to close the mental health facilities in our district. In Pecasset, which is in Bourne, there's 16 inpatient beds for mental health services, vital to our region. The only state funded facility in the entire Cape and Islands region. A place that like Plymouth County actually has higher than average suicide rates. And so this is a region in Plymouth and in the Cape that has a lot of mental health needs. And so closing beds in our region is a complete non-starter for me. And we launched a campaign against it. We had a petition with thousands of people. We did rallies. We hosted community forums. And to the governor's credit, she listened to us, heard our concerns about it, and just, I think, last week announced that actually the state's gonna save these mental health facilities, keep them open, and that was a huge early win for us, and we're really grateful to the governor for listening to us and keeping mental health beds in our region. I think that's a good start. I think the next conversation is, how do we expand mental health access for men and women that are struggling, and I know people who are.
It's been such a huge issue, at least over the last 5 years. It's become more talked about and more a part of the common conversation that everyone is having, and how it affects everyone, no matter race, class, age. So are there anything at the state level that we could look at for support for that, do you think, coming?
Yeah, look, I think, we've done some big things on this. So we've passed mental health parity laws in Massachusetts, which basically says that insurers have to reimburse, mental health on par with how they reimburse physical health. So there's been an increase in reimbursements and coverage of mental health services in our state. That's been a positive. There's still more work to do there. There's still a gap there, but we've actually done a lot to trend in the right direction to make mental health services more accessible to people, and they have become more accessible. We also passed legislation around telehealth as well, and that's opened up mental health access to a lot of people, especially in geographically isolated areas. And we're these are pretty some of the communities we're in are pretty geographically isolated, so that's been a big help. But I do know that we still have a lot of more work to do, and it is still hard for people to find, put aside inpatient, which is what we worked on and saved, but also outpatient, or just finding a therapist and a provider can also be a challenge. Through telehealth, that's actually opened it up quite a bit. But if you don't just want to do telehealth, there's still some barriers to access there that we need to address.
So we have mental health. Usually the other thing that is a big issue in the area is education. Yeah. So what is happening with that? What do you see as some issues that you'll be working on for that? Yeah,
well, I mean, Plymouth is, has some big education. I mean, Plymouth, the public schools are quite good, but there's a lot of funding needs that come with it. In Massachusetts as a whole, I think we should be proud to live in a state where we rank number one on everything when it comes to education, according to the latest scorecard. Every both grades levels tested and both kind of English and sciences, we're beating the rest of the country, which we should be proud of.
We're really strong in that
area. When we compete in Massachusetts, we're not competing against other states. We're competing against like Singapore and Sweden and other top tier education focused countries. So we start in a good position, but when I look at Plymouth in particular and our region as a whole, Plymouth has huge school bus costs because it's not a regional school district, but it's over 100 square miles of town to get through and bus students.
It's a big space.
It's a big space, and there's a lot of costs. There's a lot of costs associated with that. And so we have legislation we're working on with Michelle Badger, the great rep from the area, and Kathy Lenatra as well, around how do we get the state to reimburse for some of that cost, because if Plymouth was a regional school district, it actually would be one of the top 10 largest in the Commonwealth. And so how do we get Plymouth some funding there? We have some ideas around that. You're going to see that in legislation soon. And then also we're going to be taking up Chapter 70, which is the funding formula for state aid to local school districts. It's actually been funded at the highest level ever because we passed the Student Opportunity Act a few years ago. Big deal in terms of putting more money into education in the Commonwealth, which is a good thing. I mean, it's really just an investment in kids and an investment in Massachusetts' future. So it's a good thing. But in my view, some communities have done a lot better than others when it comes to the distribution of that funding. Yeah. And so, the gateway cities, which deserve a lot of support because on average they're lower income, kind of bigger issues there. They got more funding, but it's a lot more funding. And so we need some balance here where communities like Plymouth, more rural communities in our area, communities that look like ours actually are getting their fair share of funding as well.
So you mentioned gateway cities. What would be considered a gateway city?
Gateway cities are like, and this is actually a definition defined in Massachusetts general law, but their gateway cities they're a list of communities. And so like they're the Lawrences, the New Bedfords, the Fall Rivers, the Springfields of the state, and they're considered gateway. Barnstable, actually Hyannis is actually
really
considered a gateway. As well, down the Cape. Yeah, you have to meet certain demographic, or it's guided by certain demographic and income thresholds.
Okay. Yeah. So moving on, what do you think are some of the other topics that are going to be coming up to be addressed at the state level? That come to mind? Well,
there's a lot coming up, but one thing that we're going to be really focused on is supporting our tourism industry here, because that is fundamental to Plymouth and the Plymouth economy. And, we have legislation to peel apart of the state room and excise tax. It's 5% anytime you stay in a hotel, motel, or Airbnb.
Oh, they call that the beds and heads tax?
Yeah, it's probably goes by that. Yeah, it's whatever you stay at a hotel, motel, it's the portion of the state. It's 5% that goes to the state. There's others that goes, a portion that goes local.
Okay.
But just thinking about the state, we're not raising it. We're just peeling off a sliver of that and putting that towards tourism to fund our tourism industry. Because, Massachusetts does a terrible job at funding tourism, especially compared to peer states. And this is really important sector here, one that is vital to Plymouth when you think of the incredible, like how beautiful this town is and how much tourism it attracts. But we could be doing better. And this is really about helping blue collar workers, helping our restaurant workers, helping our small inns, helping our small business owners. And that's something that we're going to be really fighting for, because I think it's an often forgotten part, because it's blue collar and it's not biotech or climate tech. But this is something that I think we should be investing state support in, especially because we're way behind other states on this. And it's right here, it's local, and it's good blue collar jobs that deserve support as well.
And then another thing that's been in the news has been the energy pricing.
Yeah.
Is there anything the state can do, jump in on that?
The state should be doing a lot more on that, in my view. I mean, look, a part of this is DPU approved really large rate hikes, which I think was a terrible decision. And we've written letters to the DPU asking them to reverse it, asking them to help ratepayers out with the cost. Ultimately, it's not legislative, but it's a DPU and an executive decision.
So it's under the governor's.
Yeah, it's under the executive branch entirely. The legislature doesn't set rates. It's through the DPU, and we don't approve it, or the legislature doesn't approve it. And I think it's way too high, and it's got to change. I mean, I'm paying it. I don't even want to show you my energy bills. Look, I'm paying it too. I think we're all really struggling. There's programs out there for low-income people. And so if people are interested, our office is happy to connect you with those programs. But a lot of this is really impacting middle-class people, like us, right? And so there's not programs there to support. So there's a couple things we want to do on this. One is, we want to take a look at the Mass Save program as well and figure out how some of the money there can be used to actually support middle income people. I think that is something that needs to be looked at, because I know a lot of people like me and a lot of people in our community are struggling to pay their energy bills.
So that will be something that's going to be coming up. So we'll keep
That's something we're going to be pushing for. And then look, if you want to really get into it, Massachusetts deregulated utilities in the 1990s, at the time when the federal government allowed for deregulation. Everything was public across the country before then. Around half the states decided to keep their utilities public. The other half went to competitive supply. Massachusetts was a state that went to competitive supply. In aggregate, if you look at the energy costs in states that they went to public, kept public versus went to private, in aggregate, states that went to private actually pay more. The ratepayers pay more. So I think it might also be worth looking at, was that a good decision? Should we set up a commission to take a look at, whether the right decision was made in the 1990s, whether there are reforms that we can make today to get at lower energy costs? That's something that I think is worthwhile, at least for the state to explore longer term, while focusing on kind of the, how do we lower costs in other ways, next year. But longer term reform, I think we should take a good look at whether that decision in the 90s was the right one, because on average, states that kept it public, and it's not, a lot of southern states actually kept their utilities public, are paying less in costs.
Interesting. So there's a lot going on. Where can people, and I know you're out in the district a lot right now, where can people go to find out more information? And how can they contact you if they have questions or they want to get involved or want more information for anything?
Well, we're here, right? So before this, we were at the Center for Active Living, and then right after that, we was at the Noontime Rotary Club here in Plymouth. And so we're in the community a lot, spending a lot of time here. I love Plymouth. Our office is in Cordage Park. So come stop by the office, or reach out to me directly. Just Dylan Fernandes at masenate.gov, or just Google Dylan Fernandes MA Legislature page, and we have my email there, office number there, and my cell phone's 508-257-1174. So many ways to get in touch, and we like it when people reach out because we want to be accessible, we want to be transparent, we want to help people, and so people should not feel shy about reaching out and asking for our support.
And you're on social media as well, so they can follow you there to see what you're doing out in the communities.
Yeah, I hate social media, but we're on it, and we update people on it. But yeah, we're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and maybe a couple other. Someone started a TikTok account. I don't even know how to log into it. But someone apparently is posting something to TikTok.
Well, look for that.
Yeah, and then we have a newsletter, actually. It's probably the best way. So we have a long-form newsletter updates. If people just go to dylanfernandes.com and sign up for it. We actually have like 7,000 people that get our newsletter, and we give people updates on exactly what's going on at the State House, how they can get involved in certain things that they're interested in. And
so they can stay up to date with everything that you're working on, any legislation and anything like that.
Yeah, and we don't, it's usually like once or twice a month update. We don't spam people.
Awesome. Yeah. Dylan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great to have you.
Anytime. My pleasure.
And we'll have you back again for another update soon.
Please.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
For more of what's good and good to know on the South Shore of Massachusetts, hit the subscribe button. And thank you for watching.